feel like I should say howdy. Get this off me. Hi, part-time time travelers. Jake here, and in this video we're going to review Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny, aka Indy 5. Now this is a bit different from our back alley reviews that we do on this channel. The back alley review is the immediate review of a movie, and I didn't even do one for Indiana Jones. And I saw this movie a few weeks ago in theaters, and I've really had time to resonate with it, and I just wanted to talk about it a bit more. There seems to be a lot of controversial reactions to this film, divisive opinions, and yes, today I'm giving this movie a positive review. You saw the thumbnail. Now, if you think I'm wrong for giving Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a positive review, take this all with a grain of salt. I give the Cat in the Hat artistic merit, okay?
I want to make cupcakes!
Cupcakes? Oh yeah!
So you could click off this video and just, not trust me. But for those of you who did like the movie and want to seek some validation, this is your video, because I really enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I guess we'll get into the non-spoiler review of it all, so if you haven't seen it yet, if you are a Indy fan or a newer Indy fan, this film has a lot to like about it. A lot of people call this movie safe, and safe it is. It hits all the beats that you would find in another Indy movie. It is a lot of fun with adventure. If you like the kind of mystery and puzzle solving, this movie has it for you. Action, there is so much action in this movie. A bit of a detriment, I'll get into that, but there is a lot of action. It's good old Indiana Jones put into another adventure. It doesn't do anything overly offensive in the film. Could it have taken more risks? In a sense, it should have, but at the same time, it is a very nice film. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was directed by James Mangold, who also did Logan, and it is not a Spielberg film, and you definitely feel it throughout. He's trying to mimic some of the Spielberg elements to this film, but at the same time, he does a really nice job doing a proper send-off to the character. Indy, this is his third movie send-off, and this one is very interesting to me, but I have to get into spoiler territory. So the non-spoiler review, watch it and form your own opinion. There's a lot to love about it. There's a lot to kind of cringe about it. But overall, it's a very good time. And I had such a fun experience with it. I went to the theater with my dad to watch it, which my dad is the one who introduced me to these films. And I never had a chance to go see Indiana Jones on the big screen. So that was really special to see with my dad, and it was a really special experience. Okay, getting into spoilers. First, I'm going to get into the things I didn't think quite worked with this movie. Get the negative out of the way. I'm going to tell you why I really enjoyed this movie. But first, the negative. So the big thing with this movie is that it's long. It clocks in at just over 2 hours and 30 minutes, and you really feel that in the middle section of the movie. They have action set pieces, and it goes from action set piece to action set piece to action set piece, and it does get very muddled in the middle. In fact, a lot of the advertisements was showing the tuk-tuk race scene. I didn't like that scene at all. I couldn't really sense what was going on. I'm a person that watches captions with movies, and of course, the theatrical version didn't have captions, so I didn't know what they were even saying. From what I did catch, it didn't really seem out of place, and I feel like it could have been filmed better to convey all the exposition that they were dropping within the tuk-tuk scene, and it did go on for a very long time. And at points I didn't even know where the freaking MacGuffin, the Dial of Destiny, was, who it was with, why it was so important. It happened all at once, and it was all over the place. And eventually, I love the third act, and we'll get into that, but it's almost too long to get to that exciting stuff. Indy and his new partner Helena solving all the puzzles. That stuff is really cool, but it was almost too little too late. Speaking of Helena, I have to get into what else I didn't like about this movie. Helena is played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She does a very good performance for what she's given. She's very believable, but the way she's written, it's almost like she's the villain of this film. In all previous iterations of Indiana Jones, whoever ends up being Indy's sidekick or confidant within the film generally has a respect for Indy for his craft and what he does, even if they don't quite like Indy, like in his son in Crystal Skull. But all the other movies, you have his father, you have Short Round, you have Marion, who do bounce off of Indy, but ultimately have a respect for him and his problem-solving skills. Now, Helena uses Indy to get what she wants, which is money. There's even one point at the film where you're watching and you're thinking, holy shit, she doesn't care that these guys are Nazis. She just wants to get her bag. And it's almost a little unforgivable, and you're like, why am I cheering for Helena? Helena also has a younger friend named Teddy, and Teddy I did grow to like over the film, but you could tell that they were trying to get that same feeling you got from Short Round and Temple of Doom. But the thing with Short Round, you liked him right away.
Wow, holy smoke! Crash landing!
Short Round, step on it.
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes!
And Teddy, it really took some time to grow on you. It's really tough for me to watch Indy not knowing what's going on and constantly getting deceived by the people he's supposed to trust, which that all happened in the middle portion of the movie. They do eventually gain each other's trust, but that's at the end of the movie. It's really frustrating, especially watching an older Indy constantly get deceived by Helena and Teddy. They just don't care for Indy, and I don't like that. I did like Helena by the end, I should mention. As I said, Phoebe Waller-Bridge did a great job. She's a fantastic character actor. I just didn't really like the direction of her character. I'm glad she kind of redeemed herself in the end, but I thought like the whole point of Helena was to have a goddaughter of Indy who was going to take over the adventures, and she was kind of a little shit. I didn't want her to take over. But that's enough about what I didn't like about this movie. I'm going to get right into what I loved about this movie. First off, the opening sequence is a 30 to 40 minute flashback of a new adventure we never saw Indy in, as he fights the Nazis on the train and he finds the Dial of Destiny. The first half of it, I should say, which kicks off the story. Now, this is de-aged Indy, and at some points it's really good, and at some points it looks like a PS3 game, but that's okay. Harrison gave their full permission for this technology, so I don't really find an issue with it. As I said, it was sketchy in spots, but I really enjoyed watching in 2023 an Indy adventure with a younger Indy. It was like I was transported back in the theaters back in the 1980s, which is such a weird feeling, especially special, as I said, sitting beside my dad. The action sequence was totally fun too. Like anytime you're train robbing, you're on top of a train, like I eat that up. I ate it up in the Polar Express, for goodness sakes. It was overall just a really fun sequence. And then it jumps into 1969, a 70-year-old Indy played by an 80-year-old Harrison Ford. This is where I see a lot of reviewers really critique the film in the fact that the grump that Harrison Ford is playing is not Indiana Jones. It doesn't match the character of the first 4 films. This is just Indy that is retired and he doesn't want anything to do with the art of adventure. I did not see it like that in the slightest. For one, they do have a really good explanation why Indy is kind of out of sorts with his son dying and the breakup of him and his wife Marion. But also they show it so perfectly when the camera pans in at Indiana Jones sleeping in his New York apartment and he gets woken up by the Beatles. A house party right beside his apartment, and he is so pissed at it, and I absolutely love this. For one thing, I'm a Beatles fan, so it made me laugh. But it shows that the world is changing. The 60s was such a big time for change in North America. The Beatles had brand new music. There is a whole bunch of protests going on. There's the space race. And this is a world that's so unfamiliar to Indiana. We're used to seeing Indiana in the 1930s doing his classic adventures, but the world is moving at a rapid pace. And it's so interesting to see a character like Indiana Jones that we've only seen in the 1930s adjust to a changing world in the 1960s. How does he react to the Beatles music? I could tell you he sure doesn't like it. He is the same guy that went on all those adventures. He's upset that he can't keep up with those adventures, and those adventures will never be the same. It's also perfectly displayed in the classroom scene. In every single Indiana Jones movie, the classrooms from the 1930s, the 1950s even, were all fascinated in Indiana Jones teaching about archaeology. But Kids are changing in the 1960s. We cut to his classroom scene where they can hardly keep their eyes open. It really just shows it isn't Indy who changed, it's the times that are changing. And it's something that I love to see. If we want to see that classic Indy, he becomes that classic Indy in this movie, but also we have 4 other films. This is a new Indy in a new world. We then get a really fun set piece of all the protests that are going on in the 60s with the space race parade. A lot of people didn't like that scene. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was colorful. The CGI was a bit meh, but it's very memorable for me, and I had such a good time watching it. It's after that that Helena's introduced, and she backstabs Indy by taking the half of the dial that her father originally owned. This is the first sense that I didn't really like her, but that's how the adventure kicks off. And it is quite the adventure. They go all over the world. I did really like later the Antonio Banderas scene where they go underwater. That's a really cool piece. Of course, that's part of the movie that feels a bit muddled, or that was a really cool part where they needed to find that piece that directed them to the next part of the dial. At that point in the film, later on, as I said, it does slow down a bit, but then they start doing those escape room mystery puzzles, and they do find the other half of the dial. Of course, Mads Mikkelsen is chasing them the whole time. He is an excellent villain. He was really fun. And of course, his goal is to use the Dial of Destiny to find a time fissure, go back in time, kill Hitler, become the head of Germany, and take the war, which is an insane aspiration. It's like, Helena, you don't need this guy's money. This guy is positively evil. Speaking of the time travel, some people don't like how they use time travel in this film. This is my favorite method of time travel, where it's an earthly phenomenon where a time fissure opens up, and this dial, all it does is it predicts when a time fissure will happen. Of course, all the codes and everything on it can pinpoint the exact dates, and that's how the Nazi wants to go back in time, Mads Mikkelsen, and go back to 1939. Of course, this leads to my favorite part of the movie, and it's the whole ending. So they're in the airplane, they're taking Indy for the ride, and they think they're going to 1939 when Indy figures out finally his first kind of hero moment in the film. They're not going to 1939. They didn't account for a bunch of stuff, which leads their time fissure. They go through it. Mads Mikkelsen is freaking out, telling them to abort, but they're getting sucked into the time fissure in the sky. And guess what? They are in like 210 BC, where the inventor of the dial, Archimedes, is alive, and there is battles on the boat. Think it's dragons that are attacking when it's these big planes. I think this was the best way to do a time travel sequence, and of course, Indy wants to stay. He thinks this is fascinating, an archaeologist's dream to see history happen with his own eyes. It was fascinating, and I really thought that they were going to end it there, and I thought, well, that's kind of safe, but I love it. Like, that's a history teacher's dream. That's my history teacher's dream. Hi, Swenson, if you're watching this. Of course, this movie then takes a really big swing, and what I mean big swing is Helena knocks Indy out and takes him back to his time, where they do get him and Marion back together, and it's a really sweet ending. It's not my favorite last shot of Indy, of his hat. I like them riding off to the sunset in The Last Crusade, but this was a really sweet ending, and it followed up like an amazing time travel ending, which I was just over the moon about. I just want to also say that the acting in this film is excellent. Harrison Ford still has it, and it was a joy to watch him up on that screen still. It's a reason in itself to go to the movie theater to see this film. It's Harrison's last outing as Indiana Jones, and he knocks it out of the park. Also a standout in this film, even though that her character wasn't in it that much, was Shawnette Renee Wilson as Mason, one of Indy's students who is a spy for the villains in the film. She did absolutely fantastic. I was mesmerized every time she's on the screen, and I wish she was in it more. So yeah, that's pretty much everything with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. As I said, I had a really good theater experience. I was with my dad. I was watching this action unfold, and something about this action is it feels different from every other movie that's out there nowadays. Not to get into the superhero argument, because I do like some superhero movies, but it is so cool to see a action mystery on the big screen. Even though it's a $300 million budget movie, it almost didn't make its money back. It felt different. It felt great. It was just exactly what we needed. It's exactly what movies needed. I was just giddy the whole time. I can't wait to watch it again. Of course, it's not a perfect movie. It's not the best Indiana Jones movie, but I think it's been getting too much of a hard time. It's a lot of fun. It has some problems to it, but the good outweighs the bad in my opinion. That's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. If you like this review, please leave a comment talking about your experience and why you like Indy. If you didn't like this film, put your ranking of all the films. I'd love to have this discussion with all of you guys. We have a lot of cool videos coming up in the next few weeks. Stay tuned. I hope you like this kind of new format where I longer form talk about these movies that are coming out. I have a lot of fun with it. But my name is Jake, aka Indy. I look more like a cowboy, but... And we'll see you next time.